In the United States, over 70 million voters have cast early ballots with 2 days to go before presidential elections. The United Nations Children's Fund calls for an end to attacks on civilians and humanitarian workers in Palestine. In Spain, Dana victims boo and throw mud at the king and queen during their visit to the affected areas. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In the United States, over 70 million voters have cast early ballots with 2 days to go before the presidential election. Electoral authorities report that more than 73.2 million citizens exercise their right to vote early. In spite of this, electoral authorities warn that each state has its own rules, but none of them will start the verification of the results before the official date, Tuesday, November 5th. Statistics show that Democrats maintain the lead with 38.2%, while Republicans have 36% of support. Experts warn that on November 5th, the results could change after the vote of those still on the fence. Also in the United States, spending on political advertising amounted to almost $1 billion in the run-up to the presidential election on November 5th. According to a report, Republican Party candidate Donald Trump spent $43.4 million between October 27th and November 2nd. The study revealed that in the same period, Democrat Kamala Harris spent about $40.7 million, but then surpassed Trump's spending of the Democrat political action committees. Likewise, more than $267 million was spent this week on ads related to congressional and governor's races. And while recovery work is in progress in Guantanamo, around 66,000 people will be evacuated by different means in 7 municipalities due to imminent rains resulting from a trough over the Atlantic Ocean. The Provincial Defense Council oriented the adoption of all measures in the municipalities recently affected by Hurricane Oscar and in areas at risk of flooding, protecting human and material resources, and defining and preparing evacuation centers in each municipality are among the priorities of the Council. President of the Municipal Defense Council of that territory, Joannis Ortiz, stated that places such as the municipal capital of San Antonio del Sur will be evacuated entirely. And in Venezuela, the project Patria Grande del Sur is making headway with a noticeable food production boost in Bolivar State. That is according to the latest review conducted by the Venezuelan Ministry of Productive Agriculture in the southern region last Friday. Project Presidential Commissioner Wilmar Castro said progress is encouraging for it has provided solutions to work dynamics. He said this pact results from merging two previous plans, one for crops and another one for livestock. In Uruguay on Sunday, the Electoral Court announced that the Frente Amplio, that is the candidacy of Yamandu Orsi, was the most voted political force in the first round held this past October 27th. According to official data from the Electoral Court, the duo made up by Orsi and Carolina Cose got over 1,071,000 votes, while National Party candidates Álvaro Delgado and Valeria Ripoll got 655,426 votes. Since none of the candidates got the simple majority, that is 50% plus one vote, the two most voted ones will go to a runoff next November 24th. According to the Uruguayan Constitution, in a runoff voting, none of the candidates needs to get a simple majority. The one that gets the most votes wins the election. In Bolivia on Saturday night, the government reiterated its willingness to engage in a dialogue called on by the Ombudsman's office, but only to address issues pertaining to its competence and not issues other, as Evo Morales and his followers have demanded. In an official address, Bolivian Presidency Minister Maria Nela Prada said the administration will continue working to restore public order and a return to normality, as well as to provide stability to the economy of families. The Bolivian presidential minister said road blockades that began 20 days ago have held the Cochabamba region hostage, with an ensuing violation of rights such as access to food, fuel, and medicines.
Nowhere in the world, the right to protest equates to a carte blanche to attack the rights of an entire population, affecting the economy at the national level, nor does it allow for the use of firearms, dynamite or other artifacts that threaten life.
We're going to take a short break, but first, remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. The United Nations Children's Fund calls for an end to attacks on civilians and humanitarian workers in Palestine. The UN agency urged the Israeli regime to conduct an investigation into the circumstances of the attack that killed a humanitarian staff member in northern Gaza. Previously, the director of the UN Children's Fund was injured when a drone attacked a UN agency vehicle on its way to Jabalia. The institution stressed that all residents of northern Gaza are at risk of death due to disease, hunger, and constant shelling. In Palestine, at least 6 people were injured, including 4 children, after the Israeli army attacked a polio vaccination center in the Gaza Strip. Medical sources report that the injured children arrived at the Gaza Baptist Hospital after an Israeli drone dropped a bomb on a group of children inside the walls of the Sheikh Radwan neighborhood clinic. The third phase of the polio vaccination campaign for children under 10 years of age was launched this Saturday in Gaza, with the exception of the north of the territory, which for 21 days has been the scene of a genocidal offensive, with Israel blocking all access to water, food, and health aid. According to UN agencies, 15,000 children remain in the north, where it is not possible to assist them due to lack of security. And Israeli forces committed in the last 24 hours 4 new massacres against Palestinian families in the Gaza Strip. At least 27 people lost their lives and 81 others were injured during the Israeli regime's latest aggressions against the Palestinian people. Health authorities report that Tel Aviv continues to block the passage of rescue teams and ambulances seeking to reach the victims and bodies trapped on the rubble. Since October 2023, some 43,341 Palestinians have been killed, while the number of wounded is over 102,000. Meanwhile, Israeli military kidnapped 16 Palestinians in the occupied West Bank, including a child. The Commission of Detainees and Ex-Detainees of the Palestinian Authority and the Prisoners Society denounced that the abductions occurred in the governorates of Ramallah, Nablus, Tuba, Salfit, and Hebron. A total of 11,500 Palestinians were abducted by the Israeli authorities since the beginning of the aggression against Palestine on October 7, 2023. And the United States is blocking the delivery of humanitarian aid from Iraq to Lebanon, and it has threatened to sanction the Lebanese airline Middle East Airlines if it were to transport any wounded people. The U.S. government requested that any humanitarian aid for displaced people and refugees by the Israeli war be delivered through Jordan for prior inspection. Since the escalation of the Israeli war to Lebanon in September, Iraq became its main supplier of humanitarian aid. Meanwhile, Washington insists on continuing to interfere in Beirut's policies. And in the United Kingdom, pro-Palestinian demonstrators rallied at the Prime Minister's residence and the United States Embassy in London to demand an end to the supply of weapons to the Israeli regime. British activists took to the streets of London with Palestinian and Lebanese flags, as well as banners calling for the liberation of Palestine and an end to the genocide in Gaza. Some of those present came to the vicinity of the British Prime Minister's office to lay down on the ground to symbolize the dead bodies of thousands of Palestinians, including women and children. Pro-Israeli counter-protest group also took to the streets of London, holding British and Israeli flags.
Obviously I feel very strongly about what's happening in the Middle East and Palestine in particular, and coming out on the march seems to be the only thing I can do. I want to make the government in this country aware of how strongly people feel.
I'm really against the genocide and injustice that's going on in Palestine, that's been ongoing for a very long time now, and I'm just very upset with Western governments in general for the way that they've been sort of conducting themselves and the narrative that's been going on at the moment. Yeah.
In the United States, pro-Palestinian demonstrators marched in Boston to call on people not to vote for sponsors of genocide in the upcoming presidential election. As election day approaches, voters have been increasingly critical of the campaigns of the two leading candidates, especially that of Kamala Harris, who, following in the footsteps of Joe Biden, intends to continue armed support for the Israeli regime. Many Palestinian supporters argue that Harris should impose a permanent arms embargo on Israel and call for recognition of a free Palestinian state.
Good guys, right? The Democrats are supposed to be human rights and all of that, international law, and just seeing them allowing and paying for and covering for and lying about this genocide is just so outrageous that I actually quit the Democratic Party. I've been a Democratic voter my whole life, but I quit and I'm planning to vote for Jill Stein.
And in Iran, hundreds of thousands of people took to the streets on Sunday on a day of struggle against world arrogance to condemn the crimes of the United States and Israel in the Middle East. A crowd marched in Tehran with flags of Palestine and of Hezbollah resistance group in support of the Lebanese resistance and the oppressed people of Gaza in their struggle against the aggressions of the Zionist regime. Demonstrators also carried photos and portraits of Iranian revolutionary leader Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei and portraits of martyrs of the resistance killed by the Israeli army. November 4, 1979 was declared Students' Day and Day of Struggle against World Arrogance in honor of a group of revolutionary students who seized the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, dubbed the Nest of Espionage. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back. In Spain, authorities issued an orange alert in Valencia and several eastern areas due to strong rainfall. State weather agencies said that the country will be experiencing storms in the Mediterranean which could cause flooding in several parts of the country, including the areas affected by the Dana weather event. Authorities also announced that an orange alert will be enforced in Murcia and the south of Catalonia, as they could be affected by flooding. The Emergency Coordination Center warned that the storms could be accompanied by hail. On Sunday, the movement of non-residents and volunteers will be limited in at least 11 municipalities of Valencia affected by the Dana. And in this context, the King and Queen of Spain were received by those affected by the Dana weather event with booing and rejection during a visit to Paiporta municipality. During a visit of government authorities to the Valencian community, residents of the area threw mud at the Spanish royal family, Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez and the President of the Valencian government, Carlos Mazón. Citizens accused the authorities of being responsible for the death that occurred in Valencia. Likewise, demonstrators called for immediate actions from the government to attend to the emergency caused by Dana. On Saturday, women in Senegal took to the streets of Dakar to demand climate justice ahead of the United Nations COP29 summit in Azerbaijan this month. Over 50 climate activists took part in the rally. Demonstrators seek protection of the country's resources and call for a decarbonized future. They also reaffirmed that nothing has changed in spite of the climate conferences. For this reason, in the last 4 years, they have mobilized to reject the spending of billions in the conference, which, in their opinion, does not solve the problems. On the other hand, they urge the countries with the highest pollution index to look for mechanisms to reduce their greenhouse gas emission. In Mauritania, a Chinese hospital chief arrived to provide medical support to the local population as part of the mission Harmony 2024. The Chinese ship began its first goodwill visit of 7 in the country, It's also the first time that a ship of the Chinese Navy has visited the country since China and Mauritania established diplomatic relations in 1965. The official medical team left the ship for the medical centers where they treated women, children, and elderly residents with prevalent health problems such as hypertension, diabetes, and gastrointestinal disorders. On the other hand, the ship's authorities announced that the objective is to provide health and hope through the warmth of care. And in Moldova, runoff presidential elections are on the way with over 3 million citizens able to vote. Authorities said 1,988 polling stations in the country open at 5 a.m. local time. Main candidates for these elections are incumbent pro-European President Maia Sandu and socialist Alexandru Soiunaglu, who has criticized the country's policy towards Russia. 11 candidates took part in the first round, held October 20th, but none got the majority of the votes needed to win the first round. Sandu got 42.49% and Stoianoglu 25.95%. A referendum on the country joining the European Union was held on that day also, with 50.35% of the population voting in favor. The Chinese government urged Guatemala to break off diplomatic ties with the island of Taiwan and recognize the One China principle. Foreign Ministry spokesman Lin Yan pointed out that there is only one China in the world and Taiwan is part of its territory. Yan added that 53 years ago, the United Nations recognized the integrity of China's territory, and at least 183 countries have established diplomatic relations with Beijing. The statements were made after the announcement of a visit of Taiwan authorities to Guatemala and a meeting of President Bernardo Arévalo, the delegation from the Chinese island. And China is preparing for the opening of the 7th International Import Expo, where 800 buyers from different countries will attend the event. The Chinese Foreign Ministry said the international event will be attended by at least 297 of the world's top 500 companies, a record number of participants in this edition. The diplomatic headquarters stressed that the event will support 37 developing countries through exhibitions at the fair, in addition to expanding the area of African products in the Food and Agricultural Products Pavilion. The 7th International Import Expo will be held from November 5th to the 10th and will feature thematic meetings, closed-door meetings, exhibitions, and bilateral dialogues. And on Sunday, Russian military forces liberated another town in the Donetsk region after being occupied by Ukraine. The Russian Defense Ministry reported more than 500 Ukrainian losses in the last 24 hours in Donetsk. In addition, 520 Ukrainian servicemen were killed in the operations in the southern group, where 460 in the western group and 105 in the eastern group. The Defense Ministry detailed that 4 tactical missiles, 1 HIMARS missile, and 47 aircraft-type drones were shot down in the area of the special military operation. Like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website, telesurenglish.net. So join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.